I love video games. I don't think that's exactly a secret. After all, I post game fan art semi-frequently on Twitter. Hint, hint. And there's also that Sonic movie speed paint where I am barely audible because my mic was turned on too much. Either way, my love of video games should be obvious at this point. But just as much as the games themselves, I love game controllers. I can't exactly explain when this oddly niche interest developed, but I can tell you why I have it. You know, aside from the obvious fact that the controller is what we use to interact with games, so it's kind of crucial to the whole experience. I mean, look at what happens when we don't use controllers. Back to the why, it's pretty simple, honestly. I like using my hand. I enjoy fiddling with. I like to play with things with my hand. I think you get the idea. As someone who has difficulty sitting still for too long, something with all sorts of gizmos and buttons is perfect for me. Seriously, put anything I can fiddle about with in front of me and I will fiddle with it. Really? Not gonna censor that one? Getting back to the point, a good controller can be a joy to just kinda play around with. One time I picked up a Wii Classic Controller Pro from a used game store downtown, and the entire trip home I was just... Seriously, even though they're not really triggers, the ZL and ZR buttons for the Classic Pro are super satisfying to press. They're a good size, these hefty buttons, and obviously make the super satisfying click, which... Sorry. So, you're probably wondering... I said you're probably wondering which controller is my favorite. Well, that's simple. Is a GameCube is that one. Sure, by today's standards, it might look a bit unorthodox, but it's so comfortable. All the buttons are positioned in such a way to help make it easier to memorize which buttons are where, and are shaped in ways to indicate importance. The classic diamond shape is good, but for the type of games that tended to appear on the GameCube, platformers and the like, this was an ingenious design. On top of that, the control stick was a huge improvement over its predecessors. Yeah, remember the N64 control stick? Revolutionary? Yes. Good? No. But the GameCube control stick? Glorious. Perfect size, a nice textured top to stop your thumb from slipping off, and feels so good to move about. And need I mention the triggers again? Now there's a lot of really great controllers out there, each with their own feel and features, and I could talk about them all day. So instead, let's talk about some poop! This is a Fleshy Freaks controller for the PS2, and it is... The company who made this is apparently called Gemini, and I'll be frank, I've never encountered any of their controllers other than this one before. But based on my research, 5 minutes of Googling, it seems weird and frankly awful looking controllers is kind of their jam. No idea if they're still around, but making stuff like this? I somehow doubt it. Anyway, back to the sloppy seconds controller, or whatever the hell it was called. This thing is so freaking uncomfortable. Its awkward shape and gross lumpy texture make it honestly kind of hard to use. Like it hurts. It's like holding a plank covered in nails or something. The control sticks are also deeply unpleasant, feeling like they're grinding against the inside of the controller, and yet they also have this unpleasant doughy texture on the top. It's kind of hard to explain. The D-pad is the worst D-pad ever, no question. Y'all thought that the Xbox 360's D-pad was bad? No! This is the worst one! It's so hard and stiff, I'm pretty sure it would be easier to use a freaking rock to play games with. It'd Be just as easy on the thumb, that's for sure. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part are the buttons. You know, the things you need to use for actions? Yeah, all of them are terrible. X, square, triangle, circle, even the shoulder buttons are terrible. They're really shallow and always feel like they'll get stuck down whenever you press them in. And yet somehow they feel really awkward and mushy as you press them in. Yeah, it somehow managed to feel both stiff like stone and mushy like a sponge. How do you do that? Welp, despite how much time I spent yelling in this video, I really do love game controllers, and I'm glad I was able to finally ramble about them in a video. Maybe someday we shall return to the glorious world of game controllers, but for now, I must take my leave. I need some relaxing after that gross, fleshy freaks controller. So, if you'll excuse me. So here's a fun fact for all of you sitting at home. When I was monologuing about the Fleshy Freaks controller, I named every single one of the audio files related to it Fleshy Monologue and then gave it a number. Isn't that the worst thing you've ever heard? Well, on the plus side, I did get to record game trigger sound effects, so that's always fun, and I got to ramble about something I'm really passionate about. And I thank you all for listening into this nonsense. I really appreciate it. You can continue to help by following my social media, specifically my Twitter, because that's where I'm most active, and maybe shooting me a coffee if you want, because, you know, I need more money to buy awful, gimmicky controllers so I can make another one of these videos someday. You will never escape my addiction. You must live with it as I do!